Welcome to our deep dive into the world of habits.
Habits.
Yep, we're going to unpack some seriously insightful stuff from James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Oh, yeah?
All about how those tiny everyday actions add up to huge results over time.
Right.
Think of this as your crash course in getting 1% better every day.
1%.
Are you ready to unlock the secrets of lasting change?
Yeah.
I know I am.
It's fascinating how we often underestimate the power of small changes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Clay makes this point brilliantly with the analogy of an airplane's trajectory.
Okay.
Just a tiny shift at takeoff leads to a massive difference in where it ends up.
Right. It makes you realize that even seemingly insignificant choices we make daily,
Daily.
like
Yeah.
what we eat or whether we hit the snooze button, can have a ripple effect across our lives.
I know.
It's almost like we're constantly setting our own course degree by degree without even realizing it.
Absolutely. And one of the key takeaways here is that success isn't about some grand sweeping gesture, but about consistently making those tiny adjustments that nudge us in the right direction.
So how do we actually make those tiny adjustments stick? I'm guessing the habit loop you mentioned earlier plays a big role here.
It's the foundation.
Okay.
Think of it as the brain's autopilot mode. Every habit,
Autopilot.
whether it's mindlessly scrolling through social media or making your bed each morning,
Oh,
runs on this four-step loop:
four-step.
cue, craving, response, and reward.
Okay, let's break that down. Walk me through it.
Right.
Let's say my bad habit is checking social media first thing in the morning.
First thing in the morning.
How would that fit into the loop?
Well, the cue could be that little notification light blinking on your phone,
Okay.
or even just the act of waking up and reaching for your phone out of habit.
Yeah?
That triggers the craving,
The crave.
the desire to see what's new, to connect.
Mhm.
Maybe even a little fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out.
FOMO.
And then the response is actually picking up the phone and scrolling through my feed, right?
Yeah.
But where's the reward in that? Sometimes it just leaves me feeling stressed and comparing myself to others.
That's the tricky part.
Okay,
The reward doesn't have to be positive in the long run.
I see.
In this case, the reward might be that temporary distraction from the day ahead,
Uh-huh.
a quick hit of dopamine, or even just the satisfaction of curiosity.
So even a bad habit has a reward built in that makes it so much harder to break.
Exactly. And this is where Clear's insights become really practical.
Okay.
If you want to change that habit, you need to understand your own loop.
Understand.
Can you pinpoint those cues and cravings? And most importantly, can you identify a more fulfilling reward that aligns with your goals?
That's a great question for everyone listening, too.
Yeah.
Think about a habit you want to change. Maybe it's procrastination or snacking late at night.
Mm-hmm.
Can you identify the four parts of your habit loop?
Once you understand that loop, you
Yeah.
can start tweaking those different elements.
Okay.
Could you change your environment to eliminate the cue, or find a healthier way to satisfy that craving?
I'm starting to see how even small changes to the loop can have a big impact.
Yeah.
But Clear also talks about how our habits are intertwined with our identity.
Yes.
What does he mean by that?
It's a fascinating idea.
Okay.
He argues that your habits shape your identity,
Mm-hmm.
and your identity shapes your habits. It's a two-way street.
So if I always hit the snooze button, I'm reinforcing the belief that I'm someone who lacks discipline.
Right. But the good news is it works the other way too.
Oh.
If you start acting like the person you want to be, those actions will eventually solidify into a new identity.
So instead of focusing on just losing weight, I should focus on becoming the type of person who prioritizes healthy choices. That feels much more empowering.
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful shift.
I like you.
It's about aligning your actions with the person you aspire to be.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense.
It is.
But before we get ahead of ourselves and start overhauling our entire lives, Clear has a tool for us, right?
Yes.
Something called the habit scorecard.
He does. It's a brilliant way to raise awareness of your current habits before you attempt to change them.
Awareness.
Think of it like taking inventory of your daily routines.
So you're basically writing down everything you do in a day and then deciding whether those actions are helpful, harmful, or neutral to your goals.
Precisely. This isn't about judgment.
Okay.
It's about becoming aware of the choices you're making on autopilot.
Autopilot.
It's like that Japanese railway technique of point and call,
Point and call.
where conductors verbally confirm every action to ensure safety and accuracy.
It makes you think twice before reaching for that extra cookie or scrolling through social media for another hour, doesn't it?
Right.
It's about bringing those unconscious habits to the forefront of our minds.
Exactly. And once you've got that awareness, you can start to make more intentional choices about which habits to nurture and which ones to change. And that brings us to one of the most impactful aspects of Clear's approach:
Okay.
The idea that we can actually shape our environment to make good habits easier and bad habits harder.
That's where those tiny changes really come into play, right?
Yeah.
Instead of relying on willpower alone, we can set ourselves up for success by tweaking our surroundings.
Precisely. Clear gives this fascinating example of a hand-washing experiment in Pakistan.
Hand washing experiment.
Simply providing information about hand washing wasn't enough to change people's behavior, but when researchers partnered with Procter& Gamble to provide premium soap,
Premium soap.
the rates of hand washing,
Okay.
and subsequently the rates of diseases changed dramatically.
So they essentially made hand washing more appealing, which increased the likelihood that people would stick with it.
Yes.
It's like making healthy choices the most convenient option.
What's fascinating here is that we can apply this same principle to our own lives.
Okay.
Think about it. If your phone is constantly buzzing with notifications,
Oh, yeah.
it's much harder to resist checking it. But if you put your phone in another room or turn off those notifications,
Yeah.
you're removing that temptation and making it easier to focus on other things.
It's about being proactive and designing our environment to support the habits we want to build.
Right.
I like that it almost feels like a game, figuring out how to hack my surroundings to make good choices the default.
It is a bit like a game. And speaking of games,
Okay.
Clear introduces this fantastic concept called the 2-minute rule, which I think you'll find quite helpful.
Okay, tell me more. I'm all about finding ways to make new habits easier to stick with, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed.
The 2-minute rule is all about breaking down daunting tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
The idea is that anyone can do anything for just 2 minutes, right?
Right.
So instead of aiming for a 30-minute workout,
30 minutes.
you might start by just putting on your workout clothes.
Okay.
Or instead of trying to write an entire chapter of your book,
Yeah.
you commit to just writing for 2 minutes.
I've definitely been guilty of setting unrealistic goals and then getting discouraged when I can't follow through.
Yeah.
But starting with just 2 minutes feels so much more approachable.
Exactly. It's about removing any friction that might prevent you from getting started.
Right.
Once you've overcome that initial inertia, it's much easier to keep going.
It's like tricking my brain into building momentum.
Yeah.
Once I've started, I'm more likely to keep going, but how do I keep things interesting and prevent myself from getting bored once a habit becomes routine?
That's where the Goldilocks rule comes in.
Okay.
Clear suggests that we experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are just challenging enough.
Okay.
Not too easy, not too hard.
I can see how that applies to habits too.
Yeah.
If it's too easy, I'll get bored.
Right.
But if it's too difficult, I'll get discouraged.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot where I feel challenged but not overwhelmed.
Precisely so.
Mm-hmm.
Once a habit becomes fairly automatic, you want to gradually increase the challenge.
Okay.
If you've been reading for 2 minutes each night, maybe you bump it up to 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Or if you've been walking for 15 minutes, maybe you increase your pace or distance.
I see.
It's like leveling up in a video game.
I love that analogy. So it's all about starting small, building momentum, and then gradually increasing the challenge to stay engaged. Right. But I'm also curious about the role of genetics in all of this. Does our DNA predispose us to certain habits?
That's a great question, and Clear addresses it head on.
Okay.
While genes don't determine our destiny,
Okay.
they do influence our areas of opportunity. We're more likely to enjoy and excel at habits that align with our natural abilities.
So like someone who is naturally athletic might find it easier to build an exercise habit
Right.
than someone who's more inclined towards sedentary activities.
Exactly.
So it's about playing to our strengths, but it's not an excuse to limit ourselves, right?
Right.
You know, what if I want to build a habit that doesn't come naturally to me?
Clear's point is that it's important to be mindful of our natural inclinations, but not let them define us.
Okay.
It might take more effort to build habits outside of our comfort zone, but it's certainly not impossible.
So it's not impossible.
It's about recognizing that our genes don't eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify it.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to do things we hate, but about finding ways to align our ambitions with our abilities. And that leads to another interesting point Clear brings up.
Yeah.
The influence of social norms on our habits.
Yes.
We're social creatures by nature, and we tend to adopt the behaviors of those around us.
It's fascinating how deeply ingrained that instinct is, isn't it?
It is.
Clear talks about how we tend to imitate the habits of 3 specific groups:
3.
the close, the many, and the powerful.
Okay.
Our close circle includes family and friends.
Family and friends.
The many represent our broader social circle and cultural norms,
Mhm.
and the powerful are those we admire or aspire to be like.
So if I want to build better habits, it sounds like surrounding myself with people who embody those habits is key.
It can be very helpful.
But what about those times when we need a little extra boost of motivation?
Well, one technique Clear suggests is habit shaping,
Habit shaping.
which is similar to the 2-minute rule.
Okay.
It's about starting with an easier version of the habit and gradually increasing the difficulty.
So if you're trying to build a daily writing habit, you might start by committing to just 5 minutes each day and then gradually increase the duration as it becomes more manageable.
Exactly.
It's like building up my habit muscles gradually. But what about those days when I'm just not feeling it? Motivation can be so fickle.
Absolutely. And Clear offers some brilliant strategies for those inevitable moments when our willpower wanes.
Okay.
One technique he calls temptation bundling might just be the key.
Temptation bundling. That sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
The idea is to link an activity you want to do with an activity you need to do.
Okay.
For example, you might only allow yourself to watch your favorite TV show while you're on the treadmill.
Okay.
Or you might listen to a podcast you love while you're doing chores around the house.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like rewarding myself for doing those less than thrilling tasks. It takes the sting out of the have-tos and makes them more enjoyable.
Exactly. It's a clever way to hack your brain's reward system.
Hack my brain.
You're essentially rewiring those neural pathways to make the desired behavior more appealing. Another powerful tool for staying motivated is habit tracking.
I've definitely tried that before with mixed results.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I forget to track or I get discouraged if I miss a day. What's the secret to making habit tracking really work?
Clear emphasizes making it obvious, attractive, and satisfying.
Okay.
Choose a method you'll actually enjoy using, whether it's a simple notebook, a wall calendar, an app, or even a spreadsheet.
So instead of hiding my habit tracker away in a drawer, I should put it somewhere. I'll see it every day,
Right.
like on my desk or refrigerator.
You actually make it a visual cue that reinforces your commitment to the habit.
Visual cue.
And to make habit tracking satisfying, Clear suggests using a technique called the Seinfeld strategy.
Okay, now you've got to explain this one. What does Jerry Seinfeld have to do with habit tracking?
It's inspired by a story about a young comedian who asked Seinfeld for advice on how to be funnier.
Be funnier.
Seinfeld's response was simple: write every day.
Right, every day.
His advice was to get a wall calendar and put a big red X on every day that you write.
Okay.
The goal is to build an unbroken chain of X's. Don't break the chain.
I love that it's such a simple but powerful visual reminder of my commitment to the habit. And there's
Yeah.
something so satisfying about seeing that chain of X's grow longer each day.
It taps into our innate desire for completion and consistency. We don't want to break that chain.
We don't.
But even with the best strategies, we all need a little extra support sometimes.
Yeah.
That's where accountability comes in.
Having someone to cheer me on and hold me accountable can definitely make a difference, but how do I take that accountability to the next level?
Cleary suggests creating a habit contract.
A habit contract.
It's a written agreement outlining the desired behavior, the consequences for failing to follow through, and the rewards for success.
Okay.
He shares an example of an entrepreneur named Brian Harris who wanted to lose weight.
Lose weight.
Harris created a contract with his wife and trainer with serious financial penalties if he didn't meet his goals.
Wow, talk about putting some skin in the game, but it clearly worked for him.
It did.
So it's about finding someone you trust and creating a system that holds you accountable to your commitments.
Exactly. And while accountability partners can be incredibly helpful,
Yeah.
ultimately the most important relationship is the one we have with ourselves.
Ourselves.
Clear reminds us that we're all wired differently,
Okay.
and it's essential to find habits that align with our natural abilities.
Right, we talked about the role of genetics earlier.
Right.
But how do I know which habits are truly right? For me, it can feel overwhelming to sort through all the advice out there and figure out what actually applies to my life.
That's where Clear's concept of the Goldilocks rule comes in again.
The Goldilocks rule.
He suggests aiming for games where we have a slight advantage, not too easy, not too hard.
Uh-huh.
This applies to all areas of life, from our careers to our hobbies and relationships.
So it's about finding those activities that challenge me just enough to keep me engaged, but not so much that I get discouraged. It's about finding the sweet spot where we can make consistent progress without feeling overwhelmed or demotivated.
Okay.
And when we find activities that truly align with our strengths, we're more likely to experience that elusive flow state.
I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I fully understand it. What exactly is a flow state?
It's that feeling of being completely absorbed in an activity Time seems to fly by and you lose yourself in the moment. It's that feeling of being in the zone. Clear suggests that we're more likely to experience flow when we're working on tasks that are slightly challenging but not too difficult.
Ah, so the Goldilocks rule strikes again.
There it is.
It seems to be a recurring theme throughout Clear's work.
It is a powerful principle, and when we find activities that allow us to regularly enter a flow state,
Okay.
we're more likely to stick with them and achieve mastery. It's like finding that perfect alignment between our skills and our passions.
That makes so much sense. But even when we find the right habits and the right activities, we're bound to hit roadblocks along the way.
How do we stay on track and keep making progress when things get tough?
Reflection is crucial. Clear suggests setting aside time each week or month for a habit review.
A habit review.
It's like a performance review for your habits.
So I'm basically asking myself what worked well, what didn't, and what I can do differently next time.
Exactly. It's about taking a step back to assess your progress, make adjustments as needed, and celebrate your wins no matter how small.
Celebrating even the small wins. I love that it's so easy to focus on what we haven't accomplished yet and forget to acknowledge how far we've come.
And those small celebrations can add up over time, creating a sense of momentum and motivation.
Momentum.
Whether it's indulging in a small treat, taking a break, or sharing your progress with a friend, find ways to make those wins feel rewarding.
So we've talked about habit loops, environment design, the 2-minute rule, the Goldilocks rule, social influence, habit shaping temptation, bundling, habit tracking, accountability, and the importance of reflection and celebration. That's a lot to take in.
It is, but one of the most profound takeaways from Atomic Habits
Atomic habit.
is that lasting change isn't about overnight transformations. It's about embracing the power of tiny gains and trusting the process. And that brings us back to the idea of identity, which, as you know, plays a central role in Clear's approach.
Right, we talked about how our habits shape our identity and vice versa.
Right.
But Clear takes that concept even further in the final chapter of the book, doesn't he?
He does. He argues that our identity is not fixed, but rather fluid and evolving.
Still fluid.
As we build new habits and achieve new goals, our sense of self shifts and expands.
So it's not just about changing our behavior, but about transforming who we believe ourselves to be.
Exactly, and this is where the concept of casting votes comes in.
Casting votes.
Clear suggests that each time we perform a habit, we're essentially casting a vote for the type of person we want to become.
So if I consistently make healthy choices,
Yeah.
I'm casting votes for the identity of a healthy person.
Right.
And over time, those mates add up, shaping my self-image and my beliefs about myself.
Precisely. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Our actions create the person we become. Clear reminds us that we have the power to choose the identity we want to embrace.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
It's about recognizing that we're not defined by our past habits or our current circumstances. We have the ability to create a new future for ourselves, one small choice at a time.
And that leads us to Clear's final message. Tiny changes, remarkable results. The most significant outcomes in life are often the result of small, consistent actions compounded over time.
It's about those 1% improvements that over time add up to extraordinary transformations, but I'm curious, does Clear offer any advice for those of us who might get stuck along the way? What happens when those small changes aren't enough to break through old patterns?
That's a great question, and Clear does address that challenge. He argues that sometimes those deeply ingrained beliefs that can propel us forward can also hold us back.
So we can get so attached to an identity,
Yeah.
like the healthy one
Yeah.
or the successful entrepreneur, that it actually prevents us from growing further.
It's paradoxical, isn't it?
Yeah.
We build up this self-image based on positive habits.
Right.
But then that very image can become a cage if we're not careful.
It's like we're clinging to an old version of ourselves. Even when it's no longer serving us, we're afraid to let go of that identity, even if it means sacrificing further growth.
I understand.
Yeah.
Change can be scary.
Yeah.
And when we've invested so much time and effort into building a particular identity, it can be hard to embrace the idea that we might need to evolve beyond that version of ourselves.
So how do we break free from this self-imposed limitation? How do we let go of those outdated identities and embrace the growth that's waiting for us on the other side?
Clear suggests a powerful mindset shift.
Mindset shift.
He encourages us to view our identity not as something fixed and rigid, but as a work in progress. It's about embracing the idea that we're always becoming, always evolving.
So instead of clinging to a static definition of who we are, we allow ourselves to be fluid and adaptable. That takes the pressure off, doesn't it? We're not striving for some perfect end state, but simply embracing the journey of continuous growth.
Exactly. And that openness to change is essential for reaching our full potential. It allows us to adapt to new challenges, explore new possibilities, and become the best version of ourselves.
That resonates with me. It's not about reaching some final destination, but about enjoying the ride and being open to the unexpected detours along the way.
And that brings us to Clear's final thought-provoking point.
Okay.
He argues that true satisfaction isn't about achieving some ultimate state of contentment,
Okay.
but about managing our desires.
So it's not about eliminating our desires altogether,
Right.
but about finding a healthy balance between liking what we have and wanting more.
Precisely, he suggests that we can cultivate contentment by focusing on appreciating what we already have and by being mindful of the gap between our expectations and reality.
It's so easy to get caught up in the what's next mentality that we forget to savor the present moment. We're always striving for more, always chasing the next goal, and we end up missing out on the beauty and joy of the journey itself.
That relentless pursuit of more can lead to a chronic state of dissatisfaction.
Dissatisfaction.
But when we shift our focus to gratitude and acceptance, we create space for contentment to flourish.
So it's not about lowering our expectations,
Right.
but about aligning them with reality and appreciating the abundance that's already present in our lives.
And that alignment brings a sense of peace and fulfillment that can't be found in the constant chase for something more. It's about finding joy in the process of becoming, rather than attaching our happiness to some future outcome.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's not about achieving some ultimate state of perfection, but about embracing the messy, beautiful journey of growth and transformation. It's about celebrating our wins, no matter how small, and learning from our setbacks without letting them define us.
And that, I think, is the essence of Atomic Habits.
Atomic habit.
It's a framework for creating a life that's both fulfilling and sustainable. It's about making those small, incremental changes that compound over time and lead to extraordinary results.
It's been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've explored the power of tiny gains, the science of habit loops, the influence of our environment, and the importance of aligning our actions with our desired identity. We've learned how to shape our habits, make them stick, and overcome those inevitable moments of resistance.
That's a lot.
And most importantly, we've been reminded that lasting change is within reach for all of us. It starts with a single step, a single choice, a single tiny change repeated consistently over time.
So true.
So if you're ready to embark on your own journey of habit transformation, remember this: start small, be patient, and trust the process. This deep dive is just the beginning. The real magic happens when you take these principles and apply them to your own life.
So what tiny change will you make today? What small step will you take towards becoming the person you aspire to be? The power's in your hands. And remember, even the smallest actions can create a ripple effect that transforms your life in ways you never thought possible.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into atomic habits. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Now go out there and start building those atomic habits one small step at a time.